A couple of days ago, I asked Wardy to give me a rundown on the Hummingbird scanner, and as I've only ever used the scanner to look at depth.
Hang on, that's,
no, no scanner.
No, that's actually a sounder.
Sorry. Okay, we'll start again.
Sounder.
Not scanner.
Not a scanner. No.
Yeah. First lesson.
First lesson.
First lesson. Yeah. A couple of days ago, I asked Wardy for a rundown on how to use the Hummingbird
sounder. Would you like me to do the intro? Yeah, sure. Okay, doing a great job.
Right. A couple of days ago, I asked Wardy to do a rundown on the what the fuck is it called again?
Sounder.
Okay. A couple of days ago, I asked Wardy to do a rundown on the sounder for me, as I've got a new boat. Well, it's a refurbished boat, and I'm starting to go and do some fishing on my own. And this video is a result of that question. No.
How to use a sounder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a scanner.
Not a scanner. No.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so Sam wants to know how to use a depth sounder. Now, most boats have the type of sounder I've got in this. This is a Helix 9, but whether you use Lowrance or Garmin or whatever brand you use, most of them these days have sonar, 2D sonar, and they have down imaging, and they have side scan. What's all that mean?
No idea.
No idea. So anyway, we're going to run through all of them. We're going to look at how to search for different structure and different bottoms, so rocky bottom, muddy bottom, sandy bottoms. We're going to look at how to find fish. We're going to look at how to find bait skills.
No, just how to find fish. That's
just fish.
I have the attention span of a gnat, and that's all I want to know. We don't need to go into too much.
She does have the attention span of a gnat, so this is going to be quite short and to the point. But if you want to hang around at the end of the video, once I get Sam out of the boat, I'll take you through some of the details. We'll talk about what sounder around, so what kilohertz and some of the settings and stuff you can use in your sounder to get more intricate, but I'm still going to keep it pretty short. No bullshit, straight to the point, how to use a depth sounder. Let's do it.
Yep.
First thing you need to know is that 2D sonar is a cone that reads the bottom of the underneath the boat in a big circle because of the cone shape that it produces. Down imaging sonar is not a cone, it's just a straight line, and it reads a straight line of what's underneath the boat, which gives you so much more detail. Now on the screen now I have side scan. So side scan is also just reading a straight line out from the side of the boat. So we have a big cone for 2D, we have a razor sharp line looking underneath the boat for down imaging, and we have another razor sharp line just looking straight out of the boat for side scan. So very different type of images and very different uses as well. The first bit of this video is going to be how to work out what sort of bottom you want and how to find structure. So the first line there, which is just 2.5 meters of water, is the bottom. And then we've got the shadow line here, and the shadow line is really important. As we move along here, we see we're getting into some shallow water, and that line is still exactly the same. And we're going to come across some rock pretty soon. That's rock. And we know it's rock, we know it's solid because we've got a really thick maroon line or a red line underneath it. And here we go, we've got mud bottom now. So see how weak that shadow return is?
Yeah.
It's almost not even there. It's gone white and really, really weak. Yeah. We're going to come across rock again in just a sec. So watch it change. Don't worry about that fish over there. We're looking at the sounder, looking at fish. This is how people use electronics these days. Okay, so now we're going back on rock because we've got a really thick return. So see, we had a muddy bottom, yeah, a couple of rocks out in the ocean, out in the middle, then a muddy bottom, and now we've got a solid rock bottom. Now that's 2D sonar. So to clean that image up, you can go to down imaging. And down imaging, instead of being a cone, is a triangular shape with just a straight flat line as it reads the floor. 2D down imaging is like trying to draw a picture with a big thick paintbrush you use to paint your house with, where down imaging is just that straight triangle, and that's like drawing a picture but with a nice sharp pencil. And that's going to be important when we see fish later on this sounder. Okay, so just remember that for the time being. But you can see that was our muddy bottom, and this is our hard bottom. And see, we've still got a shadow on our down imaging. So down imaging creates a really good shadow as well. Okay, so this one here is side scan. So unlike 2D and down imaging where it's looking straight underneath the boat, side scan is looking out the side of the boat. My golden rule, and you can have yours set up any way you like, but for me, I only look out 15 meters out each side, but you have to take off the depth of the water because the depth of the water is included in that 15 meters. So if you're in 5 meters of water, you got 5 meters down and then you're looking out the side, because this black stuff in the middle is directly underneath the boat.
So is that 10 meters one side, 5 meters down, 10 meters one, or 5 meters one side, 5 meters the other side?
If it was 10 meters deep, yeah. But see, we're only in 1 meter, so I'm just leaving it at 15. But can you see what it looks like now? We're coming up to that little mud patch where it'll go really flat, and you can see there's no real rock out each side. But back here, it looks like clouds. That's because it's like side imaging is like a torch shooting out each side of the boat. And all that bright stuff is the face of the rock, and all that dark shadow is the shadow that a torch would make. So it goes, I'm going to fold this paper and just have a look here how the paper represents directly under the boat and then out to the side, and that's what side imaging does. You made a point before that we use side imaging most of the time when we're out fishing, and that's because I'm not the type of fisherman that is spending a lot of time looking for fish. I'm looking for structure. So side imaging is perfect for looking at structure because I can see 15 meters out each side of the boat. Okay, so now we're on the hunt for fish. This boat here that we're just about to drive past has got a little bit of rock and stuff underneath it. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my side scan on and see if we can spot anything on the side scan. There's something on the bottom there that's a bit of structure. We're just about to drive past the anchor for the boat, which is that just there. And turn around. But really hard to see. There's a bit of rock stuff there, so really hard to see if there's any fish in there. Easy enough to find the structure. As we come around this way again, we'll see more structure there. We've got more rock out the side. So we found the structure easy enough. There's good structure out there. There's like a bit of tree or bit of timber lying there. More rock. We're about to drive past the anchor again, but didn't see any fish. There's a few specks just there. So that tells me there might be fish on it. So if I go down to my 2D sonar, those specks do show up as fish. So the 2D sonar is only going to give us little specks as fish. The 2D sonar is showing really clear arches. And they've got some red in them. And the reason why they come up as arches is because the 2D sonar is a cone shape, as it hits the edge of the cone, it's a thin little line, and as it gets to the center of the cone, it actually becomes thicker and closer to the transducer. So it comes up as an arch, and then as it goes away from the line, it goes small again. So, all right, so coming up to this pylon here, there's actually two pylons, as you pointed out, this one just underneath the water as well. But just using our 2D sonar, we can see the pylon and all the fish that's sitting just off that pylon as well. So if I turn around, that big blur is the pylon, because as the beam gets wider, it hits the pylon halfway down. Those arches are fish. No question about it. There's a couple of good sized fish sitting off that pylon. And if we go past it in normal down imaging, so remember that the pylon is going to come into view as well as that straight beam hits it, because even though it's a straight beam, it's still a triangle. So it's just not a round bottom. So it hits both of those poles as the triangle gets wider. And the fish were on the other side of that pole. But see that one dot in the middle? That's why it's so hard to see fish in down imaging. You can see really good detail. Where down imaging comes into play is when you're fishing in dams and stuff like that. You can see trees underneath the water and everything. So we drove past this pylon,
And there's a heap of fish just working it as we drove past. We haven't seen the bait on the sounder yet, but there's the pylon. And as we drive around it, there's a fish on the bottom there, see it? Yeah.
Up the top.
Another one up the top, yeah. Well, those fish we saw were up the top, weren't they? So it's probably a fair point to use your eyes as well as your sounder, isn't it? That's the pylon.
Let's chuck the line on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, nice
Oh, where are you going?
Oh, he's been sharked, I think.
Oh no!
See that big,
Was that a
big
shark?
swirl? Yeah.
So what am I stuck on then?
You're stuck on a shark.
Oh, you bastard!
Gotcha.
Motherfucking! What the hell?
That was a good finger mark. Did you see it come up?
Because it swam in between.
Done. I'll just keep rigging up, shall I?
What the hell? Well, there's no point because I'm just going to get sharked every time, eh?
Well, you weren't sharked that time. You was smoked.
No. How do you know that?
Because the fish ran you into the pylon.
Yeah, but look, it's like come clean off, so it has to be a shark.
Okay. Whatever makes you feel better. So I'm doing a little bit of stuff offshore now. So I'm only in 6 meters of water, but I've got my side scan on and I'm looking at a bit of reef down the bottom there and a fair bit of rock. So I'm going to turn just to port to catch all this rock out here. And you can see that unless there's a fish directly under the boat in the black section here, I really would struggle to find fish in amongst all these lights and shadows and stuff like that on side scan. I can find rock really easily, but I can't find any fish. So I can use my down imaging to see if I can spot anything above the reef. You can see we've got a bit of growth on the reef. There could be a fish just there on that edge. There's a bit of separation there. But going back to what we've been talking about, it's very hard to find arches and stuff like that, or you won't find arches in down imaging because it's that razor sharp beam instead of that big cone shaped beam. And so if we go down to sonar, we can see that's not an arch at all. So I wouldn't even call that a fish. It could be a couple of little bait fish, but it's nothing to get me excited. And as we cruise through, you can see on sonar, I wouldn't be throwing a lure just here. There's not much here at all. So we're at a bit of reef here where on the 2D sonar, I've got some good fish sitting on the bottom here. And I know they're good fish because they're arch shaped, but they got a lot of red in them. So that's a really solid return. So it's not a piece of weed or anything like that. And they're just coming up as tiny little specks on the down imaging. So the down imaging's all about giving you that fine detail, but you can see why I love 2D sonar for actually finding fish, because that's two really good fish there. And then we've got a big piece of rock, and you can see that it's really fine weed because there's a bit of yellow in the bottom of it, a bit of red right in the middle there. That might be fish sitting in the middle there, but it's just weed that's growing on the top of that rock, and you can see how fine it is in the 2D. But there's a fish sitting above it there with a bit of red in it, and it comes up as a spot on my down imaging. I spotted a few birds working over here, and I've got a fair bit of bait on this little patch right here. But as you can see, there's a fish under it right there, but there's nothing really major going on as far as fish rounding them up. That's why the birds aren't diving. The birds are just swimming over the top of them because they can see them in the water, but they need some fish to bring them up to the surface so they can start feeding on them. Once again, the sounder tells me
not the place to fish, even though it looks really good. So here's another patch of reef, and that's a good fish on that. Another fish there. And there's our bait up on that pinnacle. And the big fish were just sitting off the bait. But that's where I throw a lure for sure. They'll come off this pinnacle here. Look at them. Look at those arches. That's what we're talking about. Got some nice fish there. And you can see them just sitting off the bait ball. Let's have a look at in down imaging as well. There's our ball of bait, perfect. And there's our fish just sitting off them. You know, nice clean arches come up as a dot. So that's probably the best example we've seen this morning. You can see how easy it is to find a spot that looks amazing with birds hanging over it and bait on it that had no fish. And just this little patch of reef here, it's got a bit of bait on it, but it's got perfect arches. Some fish on the bottom, one fish there, another good fish on the bottom, comes up as a dot on the down imaging. There's our ball of bait again. I'm just doing circles around here, that's why we're coming over the ball of bait from time to time, but that's a great example. Yeah, I'll dial that down a bit. Oh, there's some good arches, look at that. Look at that, it's beautiful. My chart speed's probably a little bit too quick, that's why those arches are so long. I'm going against the current now, so I've slowed down a bit. The faster your chart speed is, the longer those arches are going to be, but there's a lot of fish down there. See how they're just coming up as specks on the down imaging, but they're coming up as really clear arches on the 2D sonar. I am running into a pretty strong current, that's why my arches are a bit long. I could either dial that chart speed down a little bit, or what I've just done is just picked up the speed of the boat a little bit. While Sam's having a fish, let's talk about a couple of settings. Now, one thing you'll notice, especially with 2D sonar, hang on, we've got fish. Oh, little Queenie. Help. Okay, we're trying to get technical here, and Sam's catching fish. So you'll see down here, the bottom corner in this particular hummingbird is different with other sounders. It says 140 to 220 kilohertz. And that's because this sounder is a chirp sounder. And what chirp stands for is it stands for compressed high intensity radar pulses. And what that is 120 to 200 kilohertz. Now, kilohertz in itself is a measurement of 1,000 cycles a second. So that's how much any single frequency is. So if this was just 140, it'd be at 140 kilohertz or 140,000 cycles per second. But what chirp sounders do is it goes between 140 and 200, which means it's measuring in 140, 141, 142, all the way up to 200. So what that does is it's not only just a ridiculous amount of cycles per second, but it gives you a much clearer picture because it covers a wider range of frequencies. Now, frequencies themselves are important to think about because the lower the frequency, the more power each individual pulse has, because the sounder unit only has a certain amount of power. So if you think about it as if you had 1 cycle per second or 100 cycles per second, that 1 cycle per second will be 100 times more powerful than that 100 cycles per second because the unit can only put out so much power. So that being said, a really low frequency like 83 kilohertz, and my sounder doesn't even have 83 kilohertz, but a lot of sounders do, is a very powerful frequency that'll drive down into very deep water. And it also, because it's so powerful, covers such a wide area of the floor. So the lower the kilohertz, the more powerful it is, and the more of the floor bottom you'll actually see. And there's a great diagram here I'll show you of 83 kilohertz being nice and wide, and then the 200 kilohertz beam being very narrow. But the 200 kilohertz would be a lot clearer, and the fish will come up a lot clearer than what the 83 kilohertz does. On this sounder here, I can flick through my my tick button here and change it to 180 to 240, or 150 to 220, or as I like to use it, because I use shallow water all the time, and I just use 140 on 200. But if I wanted a clearer picture with a narrower beam, I could go to the 180 to 240. Now, in the menu, you'll see chart speed here, and I've got it on 1. I've got it on the slowest setting. And if I dial it right up to 10, you can see how fast that chart is moving now. And all those rocks, instead of being nice fluffy clouds like they look like before are all blurred lines. You have to match your chart speed to your boat speed. This boat, when I'm idling around looking for fish, I'd put the chart speed on about 3, but if I'm going with a strong current, I might put it on 4. If I'm going against a strong current, I might put it on 2. You just have to think about your chart speed as well as all your other settings. So I'm out in the little boat today. I've brought you out in this boat intentionally because some of you are probably looking at your sounder at home and thinking, well, my sounder's not the same as yours, Wardy. And look, all sounders are very different, but this particular sounder I've got on here is a Gen 1 Helix. So the Gen 1 Helix doesn't have the mega, so it doesn't have the really, I call it high definition. It's not really the right term for it, but it doesn't have that high definition you get from the mega. So I've got side scan on at the moment, and my side scan's reading 455 kilohertz, so it's not even in chirp. So it's just reading the one reading. But can I see fish on this thing? Absolutely. So you don't need that, mega high frequency sounder that I've got. Spotted fish out to the side. I get very distracted very easy. I've got to stop doing that, so sorry. But you don't need the latest sounders. This is an old model. It's about 12 years old, this one. It goes up to 455 kilohertz on side scan, where my new boat has over 1,000, so it's megahertz. The good thing about this is it's normal sonar. You can have 83 kilohertz, and 83 kilohertz gives you a really wide beam, and you can have 200 kilohertz or a bit of both. There's a bit of structure on the bottom here, so let me take you through what I can find out on this little side scan. So I'll turn this camera on here. Turn it on maybe. There we go. Might be a bit of a glare on the screen because it's the middle of the day, so I do apologise for that, but I'll color correct it the best I can. You can see I've got a bit of timber here, bit of timber poking up off the bottom, and it gives me a really clear shadow of it as well. It seems like I've picked a random stretch of creek, but this creek does have a bit of timber sitting on the bottom of it, so I did pick this intentionally. And these little specks out to the side here, especially when they've got some shadows behind them, like that's a really good example there. That is a grain of rice with a shadow behind it, and that's a fish. These bright marks you can see here, that's the bank, and it's picking up all the mangrove roots and the mangrove leaves. You can see I've got some timber lying flat along the bottom there, and that shows up as, more the shadow than the actual white reflection as well. So I'm going to turn around and go back and show you that again. And what I'm also going to do is, you can see I've got my side scan shot out to 25 meters, and I'm wasting a lot of pixels that'll give me more definition. So I'm going to reduce my side scan so I can see both sides of the creek, but this creek's not 50 meters wide, and I've got it shot out to 25 each side, which is obviously 50 meters. So in the menu, my side 25, I'm going to reduce that. I can reduce that to 15, I think, and I'll miss the very edges of the creek, but I'll get much better definition as I cross over this time through the creek. So I'll freeze the frame here for just a bit, because on this freeze, I'll show you how to freeze the frame too if I haven't showed you in the video already. I'll try not to repeat myself, but I've just frozen that for a sec because I've got a barramundi moving through the screen just here, and I can tell by the shadow and something behind him where the shadow doesn't really tell me exactly what it is. And as I move this cursor over, I can go straight over to where that barra is and hit zoom, and zoom it in twice and have a look at the shadows. So I've got the, and I can't be 100% sure it's a barramundi, but if we just have a look at the shadow, I've got the fish coming up as that grain of rice. It's quite a large grain of rice, this one, and you can see by the shape behind it, it's definitely the shape of a barramundi. So you could probably safely assume that that's a nice big barra cruising through the creek. So look, there you go. It's a fair bit of information, and you can muck around with your sounder quite a bit and play around with the settings. But you can see on the screen there, I've got the 3 main ones that just about all sounders have these days. You can get your live scope and all that stuff, which is all extra. Even your 360 view, which is a bit extra. But just the basics on sounders these days is your side scan, your down imaging, and your 2D sonar. And I hope I gave you an explanation on how they all get used. You can muck around and have these set up any way you want. I've showed you the way I fish. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. You may hate the way that I fish and choose to do something completely different. You can even have all 3 on the screen at the same time. One thing I like to muck around with is having my side scan quite large and my down imaging, my 2D, quite small, just in case I want to have a look at, you know, what's on the side scan, and then if anything pops up on the 2D or the down imaging. So look, muck around with your sounder, have a bit of a play with it. Hope you get a good understanding of how sensitivity works. Sensitivity gives you more information, where the contrast just cleans it up. So you can have that set to however you want. The other thing that's really important is colors, because everyone's eyes is a little bit different. You can come down here. The 2 colors I like is the blue and the yellow. Green's not too bad either. You can flick through and find different colors. But for me, the yellow, which is color number 2 on this sounder, shows up the fish better than any other color for me. But that's up to your own eyes, so it's all very different. Like I said, have a bit of a play with it. And if you've got any questions or any comments or things that you found out that are really good, throw them in the comments, and I'll get around to answering all of them.